So thank you so much for joining us to learn about the impact that COVID-19 has had on domestic violence in Westchester County. My name's Lauren Pomerantz. I'm the coordinator of the Scarsdale Safe Coalition, Children, Families, Community. The Safe Coalition is a program of the Scarsdale Edgemont Family Counseling Service. We aim to raise awareness of family violence, teen dating violence, sexual assault, youth violence, and the importance of healthy relationships. The Safe Coalition seeks to communicate available resources and strengthen the delivery of inter-community services. Through ongoing communication, collaboration, and the use of research-based framework, we believe we can achieve a vision for a safer community for the children of Scarsdale. I am very excited about today's initiative. We are hoping that this important conversation, aiming to share a snapshot of the many robust and collaborative resources available to families, will be viewed by many of our community members. While we are grateful for the existing representation from all community sectors, membership on the Safe Coalition is open to anyone who is interested in working towards our shared goals. Please feel free to reach out to me if you are interested in being involved in any way. We all know that domestic violence has been a concerning issue among the COVID-19 pandemic. Families in quarantine and social isolation have made a nation aware and concerned for victims of domestic violence. We wanted to gather the leading experts and professionals in Westchester County to learn a little more about the impact the pandemic has had on domestic violence, and most importantly, how and what resources can still be accessed. Our conversation will be led by Laura Daniels, who has a rich history in this field and is an asset to the Safe Coalition. She will be asking our experts to weigh in on a few different questions.
I'm a lawyer in solo practice. I formerly worked for the Pace Women's Justice Center representing victims of domestic violence, and I continue to represent many victims of domestic violence in my private practice.
Hi, my name is Susan Carroll. I'm the Director of Training, Outreach, and Education at the Pace Women's Justice Center. We are a nonprofit, free civil legal services provider in Westchester and Putnam counties, representing over 3,000 victim survivors of intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and elder abuse.
Hi, my name is Michelle Walker. I'm the director of the Family Justice Center. We're located in the White Plains Courthouse. We work collectively with our partner agencies to provide comprehensive services to survivors that come into the courthouse needing assistance.
Hi, I'm Alexa Kaufman. I am a counselor and advocate at Hope's Door. We are a nonprofit that serves the Westchester County community and helps survivors of domestic violence safely leave their abusive situations, as well as offer counseling, legal, and financial support services.
Hi, everybody. I'm Darlene Rita from the Westchester County Office for Women. Our mission is really threefold. We provide direct services to victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, elder abuse, and we work very closely with our community partners, those who are represented here today, as well as other community partners. We also provide trainings and presentations so that we can educate the community on domestic violence and its effects. And finally, we work on public policy through groups such as our Domestic Violence Council, where we can meet together and bring community partners together to discuss domestic violence and ways that we can address it within the county.
Starting with Michelle Walker, I'd like to know how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the way in which your organization provides services to victims of domestic violence.
At the Family Justice Center in the courthouse, our clients are able to walk in and meet face-to-face. So there were challenges when we had to go remotely. So we continued providing services with the partner agencies that you see here and other agencies within the community. It was difficult for our clients because it worked for them when they came into the courthouse. They were able to sit in an office space, talk to us privately in a confidential space, and we would be there to navigate the whole court system with them from beginning to end of getting their orders of protection and doing those warm handoff to our partner agencies. It was a challenge because now we were remotely, we were doing everything over the phone, trying to come up with creative ways to communicate with our clients, which was very challenging, and working closely with the collaboration with the partner agencies that you see here, Hope's Door, Office for Women, My Sister's Place, Victims Assistance Services and Pace Women's Justice Center, we all would communicate on a daily basis with our clients to try to see how we can creatively come up with new ways in order to communicate with them in a safe environment.
Given that your office was closed during a particular period of the pandemic, how did your potential clients find out about you, and how did they access you?
Well, before the closing of the office site, myself and the advocates, we started talking and trying to see how we can best call our clients, let them know that although the physical office was closed, we were still working remotely. So we were all taking calls. We were being supported with one another. Everyone that you see here communicating, making sure that the clients had all of the numbers of the partner agencies that you see here today and all the other community agencies. So we tried our best to contact most of our clients because clients' information is confidential. So we wanted to make sure we protected that information, call them and made sure that they had our contact numbers and important numbers. And most importantly, letting them know to call 911 in case if there was an emergency, and safety planning with them and talking to them about having their children also do safety planning around what was best and what worked best for them.
If you determine that the client needed an order of protection, how would you connect them with your partner?
Probation and Pace Women's Justice Center, we were making sure in legal services of the Hudson Valley, making sure that we would call and do that warm handoff, give the client the telephone number, and also myself and the advocates made sure that we called the Family Court Legal Program for PACE and called probation to let them know that we had a client that needed help, and made sure that we did follow-up phone calls after that to make sure that that warm handoff was done and that contact was made for the client to help them.
Thank you. I'm directing this question to Susan Carroll. If you received a contact from the Family Justice Center or from any other source, referral source, how would you help that client during the period of time that the courthouse was closed?
Given the governor's health concerns and the pandemic restrictions, we immediately pivoted to a remote access platform. So people could contact us through phone or through different web platforms such as Groovio or Zoom as well. And we would start the process there. It's almost impossible to be a pro se litigant in the best of times. And certainly during this COVID pandemic, it's proven to be 10 times as hard, because when petitioners walk into the courthouse, particularly at the start, they would be placed in a room downstairs and speak both to the judge and either to probation or to our lawyers only via the device, to be in a platform in that manner. So in a profession, and certainly in terms of helping victims, it's a really face-to-face driven process that you want to build up their confidence and trust. You want to be able to look them in the eye and show your support and your belief in what they're going through, and make sure they understand that you are making that connection from the start. Now, if you're talking through a phone or a web-based platform, you're already intimidated as a victim survivor and a non-attorney to know what the process is like, and then not to have someone there to advocate for you. And even more importantly, check that order after, because we have found when clients will go in on their own, sometimes they'll contact us a day or two later to indicate that they got an order that wasn't consistent with their request. Perhaps they asked for a vacate and they ended up with a refrain from, or perhaps they requested certain conditions, use of drugs or alcohol or something regarding the children, and that didn't happen. If you find that on your own as a pro se litigant a day or two later and then try to go in and amend that petition again on your own, it's an uphill battle. The other part of the process, which is also frustrating for both our pro se litigants and I think all the attorneys who are currently practicing now, is that the difference with communicating with the court through Zoom or the phone is you have the ability to negotiate in person and kind of, I don't want to say push back, but hope to nudge the judge in the direction that of protections that your client needed. When you're speaking to someone over the phone who calls in at the last minute for a link, you don't necessarily have that same ability to lean over and whisper in your client's ear, nor do you have the ability to stop the judge, he or she from hitting end on the Zoom call if you still want to say something else. So the only thing I would urge is for any potential victim survivor out there, if they could make that connection first with, Family Justice Center, Hope Store, Office for Women, or some other Scarsdale Family Coalition, some advocacy agency who could help them start to build that safety net around that and help them speak to an attorney if possible first, because it's also been difficult to get to support. They had the courts open at the start for emergency orders, but support orders were being put out 2 months plus. So great if you got to vacate, but if that vacate meant that the individual who's helping support pay the bills for your children, Con Edison, everything else is now out of the house and you have no means to get money, and your family doesn't necessarily want you living with them because your mother is 80 and worried about COVID and your young kids, it was an impossible situation.
How did you obtain orders of protection during the pandemic?
Thankfully, a few years back, New York State started with a pilot program that proved to be very successful to do the first order, the ex parte order by Skype. And PACE Women's Justice Center was one of the organizations that were part of that pilot program. And it's been a wonderful resource because we've helped seniors in hospitals or victim survivors with young children, and because of fear factor or other concerns, were unable at that time when the courts were still open in the normal fashion to go into the courthouse and seek that first order. So that mechanism, that platform was already there. So we were able to just, build on that, because that became, March 16th, what everyone in New York State was doing when they were no longer allowed in the courtroom. They all had to access what is now Microsoft Teams remote platforms to seek an emergency family court protective order.
I believe you said that your office is currently closed for litigants. Is that correct?
Our family court legal program, it is open and the attorneys are in the courthouse, but currently, although hopefully that will change soon, they are brought into a room downstairs to speak to us. They can connect with us, and we urge them to connect with us before they come, if at all possible, because then we're going to start that safety link with our advocacy partners. And we're also going to discuss sort of an intake at the beginning to maximize the efficiency of their time. So when they come to the courthouse, we've hopefully started the process. We know what they want, and we've set up supports around that. And right now, in terms of our center office, we have a remote walk-in legal clinic that is currently not open for walk-ins, but it's never stopped being open for phone calls, audio, Zoom. Additionally, there's a great new partnership with the 9th Judicial District and the Houses of Worship to allow access to computers in several churches throughout Westchester. And I know they're seeking to expand that, which is another great way, as Michelle mentioned, if people aren't safe at home and don't have the ability to connect in front of their kids or their children, or maybe Wi-Fi is a luxury for so many, right? So maybe they don't have that Wi-Fi access that's secure. If we can provide a place that's closer to home for them to start to plan a safe way to support themselves or their family, we're making huge advances for them.
Once you've obtained the order of protection for your client, how would you connect them to the other services that are available?
Right. Great question. Well, we hope to connect them before we get the order, or at least during that day or that process, because we know that the order, any sort of intervention can be a really triggering event that actually causes concern for a client's safety, because if an abuser is suddenly being served with a vacate order, their world is falling apart around them, he or she. And it's great the litigant got that, or the petitioner got that protective order, but how it then plays out in their life and with their children really makes a huge difference. So we try to connect them as we're just starting the process, so they can talk to someone about safety planning. Perhaps if they have a custody order or a support order they're also seeking, we can discuss that, or any visitation schedule with kids and how that will play out in the pandemic and what the courts may or may not do. And then we certainly reconnect them at the end of the process, meaning when we get that protective order, with an advocacy agency, so they can have that contact as that order plays out, meaning that first night at home or the next day or the day after, or the first exchange of children for visitation. Because really, a domestic violence victim is so different than any other type of crime victim, in that it's not a situation where your car is taken, you report it to the police, and you get your insurance claim, right? When you're a DV victim, you get your order or you get a criminal order, but you perhaps still have children with this abuser, you still have a financial dependency with them, or you have own property together that needs to be sorted out. You have babysitting or childcare arrangements. So there's so many pieces to the puzzle with a domestic violence victim that the court is just one, it's an important part of it, but it's just one part of it.
Alexa, if if your agency had a client that was referred, how would they handle that victim specifically during the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. So we get our calls throughout the pandemic and before through our hotline. So when we get a hotline call, it's open 24/7 and we have bilingual counselors available. And just like Susan and Michelle were saying, we immediately speak with the client about what they're looking for and what their situation is, and then immediately go into safety planning, because we like to say safety planning is a verb, not a noun. It is constantly moving and changing. And we want to make sure that from the start to the middle to the end, we are changing that plan that works for the client. So when we get those calls through the hotline, we'll ask them, what's going on, and then what services might be, most supportive for them. And when it came to counseling services, because our physical doors were closed for quite some time and we are back in the office, however, we are not seeing clients in the office, we went completely remote. So that went from Zoom meetings to phone calls to emails. But just like we said before, that became slightly difficult, oftentimes very difficult, when you had an abuser right behind them. And so what does that conversation look like when we're trying to do advocacy and counseling services when the person is over their shoulder? And so trying to come up with safe words, or even, kind of code things to say, I actually can't talk right now, I'll try calling back later, using safe email and doing password protection. And again, updating the safety plan on almost a daily basis to make sure that the conversations can still continue between the advocate and their client on a, again, that daily basis and in a safe way. When it came to legal services, Hope Store does have a legal team, but they also work very, very closely with Family Justice Center and PACE. We have a lot of connections with them. So they were constantly talking with each other about what's the case and how can we work as a team together to get an order of protection, to start a divorce process, to put any sort of petition into place that is appropriate. And then when it came to shelter, that was a big change for us. In the past, if someone needed shelter, we would, of course, see if there was room in our shelter. If not, we would ask them and give them information about other supports. But if there's room in our shelter, now with COVID going on, what needs to happen is they need to quarantine before going into the shelter because there's other people there. And so that turned into getting tested and working with some wonderful, wonderful agencies to help get them hotel housing for a little while. And while we, of course, can't, disclose any of that information, the availability and the support from these, different hotels in allowing our clients safe shelter, as well as providing them with transportation to that, was just such a great connection and partnership that is still continuing. And once we got them into that space to make sure that they were quarantining safely, we would have counselors and advocates from the shelter and from community services go in on almost a daily basis and do intakes with them, do check-ins with them. If they had children, make sure that the kids were doing okay, make sure that they had access to food and appropriate care if necessary, and just give them that advocacy service that they deserve. And once their 2 weeks were up, they would now come into shelter and receive all the shelter services that are normally provided, from food to bed to counseling services, and again, even legal support.
Great. So I know that Hope Store also conducts group therapy sessions and therapy with young children. I'm wondering if that's been continuing.
Yeah, so we had to be creative with the group as well. That ended up turning into more on Zoom platforms, but we also wanted to open up our services to other victims who weren't in groups at the time, but who could use that extra safe space. And we needed to be careful of what we were calling it, right? So if we're reaching out to clients and possibly someone is over their shoulder saying, hey, do you want to join a DV group? That doesn't look great, right? And that's completely unsafe. So we ended up giving out topics. So personally, I run a mindfulness group with some of our clients. And so we were able to say, this is an extremely stressful time. If you're a parent, if you are just stuck at home, working from home, trying to navigate these situations, mindfulness might be a really great way to relieve some stress. So while we weren't calling it, a DV support group, and even in the support groups themselves, we're being very careful of how we are talking about domestic violence within their lives. We're really giving them kind of psychoeducational tools to promote self-care and wellness, and in some ways safety planning as well, because providing that self-support is also a part of safety planning. And if some of the folks on the Zoom calls were feeling safe, they would be able to share with us some experiences that they were going through. We'd be able to quickly work with them, again, if all the other clients were also in safe spaces, or utilize, let's say, the topic at hand, mindfulness, and try to give them that support there. We started doing more virtual lessons. So just today, I had one of my youth educators run 3 virtual Zoom platforms with middle schoolers and high schoolers, spanning the classic Prezi presentation that we give out, to going over scenarios with them, to talking about self-care, and really just working with young folks to say, we are here to support you, even if it's through this little box, right? And so that can be difficult at times, because oftentimes we'll see 8 students with their faces and then 8 blank screens with some names. But really, at the end of the day, it is us just looking to continue to reach out and make sure that we are present, so that, God forbid, if there is someone who's in need, they have known this entire time that all of our services are available. It may not just be face-to-face, it's going to be through a computer or through a phone or through email.
Great. So directing the next question to Ms. Rita at Office for Women, can you tell me what types of advocacy your organization provides, and how inquiries might have changed during the pandemic from prior to that?
Prior to COVID, we always say our helpline was open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We don't have a 24/7 hotline, but during COVID, we said, you know what, we need to really be available for when people call us. One thing that we found out during COVID was that, and again, many of my colleagues have touched on this, is that it was really hard for victims to reach out themselves, because, they were home with the abuser, especially it was cold weather. They were stuck in, if you have a normal situation, it felt very tight, right? To have your children home from school and your partner was there perhaps, and everybody's trying to Zoom in on work and schoolwork and everything else. So imagine if you have an abuser home with you who's following everything you do and literally breathing down your neck sometimes. You barely get a second to yourself. And we knew that was happening. The phones were quiet. Victims did not have the opportunity to reach out. So one thing we thought was helpful was to put together a resource list, so that, and really give our cell phones out to as many people as possible, a comprehensive resource list, so that victims could have as many resources as possible to reach out to. And also what we started saying at the top of that resource list was, if you're not able to reach out to a friend who can reach out on your behalf, and maybe have a code word for that friend, like teddy bear or whatever the situation may be. So if you call your friend and say, hey, I just picked up this cute new teddy bear, for my daughter, that friend would know to reach out to the police or to a domestic violence service provider on that victim's behalf.
When this pandemic hit, and then we had the race crisis, that people were out of job, people didn't have food. There were so many things that were just igniting all at once. Our clients' mental health, it was too much for them. So we had to make sure that we kept all of their information, so that when they needed to call us and say, hey, you gave me a number to Pace Women's Justice Center, but I don't remember that number. We were making sure that those numbers were working, that there was somebody there calling and following up the advocates constantly to make sure, hey, did this client follow up and contact you? So there was a constant follow-up. The database and the resources were very, very important, and making sure that warm handoff. Some of our clients in one day can speak to an average 2-3 people in one day, and it became very taxing for them. And then having to make sure that they're safe, their children are safe, and then making sure that they monitor and organize all of this while the person that's abusing them in the house is not catching, not focusing on what they're doing to try to keep them safe within the household, which was very difficult for them.
Yeah, even our hotline services, we always want to make sure that people understand that absolutely the hotline is for emergencies, and it can be for questions, or it can be for information regarding other services that are related, of course, to DV, because it's a domino effect, right? If I am being abused at home, and now especially during COVID time, I've lost my job, and now I don't have money to pay rent, and now I'm having this person financially start to abuse me, what other resources can I access access to help gain some financial independence there? Or what if I'm about to lose my house? What if I can't get food on the table anymore? And this person isn't letting me go out to get food. It's all interconnected. And so our hotline services also have a list of those resources and are able to access resources that Michelle is posting on, their webpage and helping other folks get. And again, having that constant communication with people has been so overwhelmingly positive because, like you had said before, we are running full steam ahead. There has been, obviously a massive glitch in our society when it comes to what's going on in COVID, and our services have not had a single hiccup. We are just making sure that people understand that we are here for them. And that, again, it can be from, I need to get out of my house immediately, to, I'm not even sure if this is abuse. Can you help me figure out, where I am in my life right now and how I can process this and how we can work together in that process.
This question is directed to Susan Carroll at the Pace Women's Justice Center. Are there any fees for your services?
At the Pace Women's Justice Center, for access to our services at the family court legal programs, helping anyone who needs help with an emergency order of protection, custody or support petition, there are no fees. We are a nonprofit, so we don't provide any fees for any of our services.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, directing the attention to the other providers, are there any other fees that a client might experience with your organizations? I guess starting perhaps with Alexa at Hope's Door.
No, we also are a nonprofit, so our counseling, legal, and shelter services are all free of charge. They are all confidential, and they are open to folks from all walks of life.
And at the Office for Women, is that the same?
It is. We're a county agency, so we too serve all victims of domestic violence at no cost. All our services, are free and confidential, and we serve everyone who is a victim.
And Ms. Walker, is there any fees related to the work that you do for your clients?
No, at the Family Justice Center, our services are free and confidential. Also, we assist clients who come in who are survivors of domestic violence or sexual abuse. We assist them with filling out the New York State Office of Victims' Compensation. So that's an application if there's compensation that they're looking for, medical reimbursement because of a crime, we can assist them with, the advocates will assist them with filling that out, but there is no fee at all for any services that we provide.
I think I would just add in that we focused on sort of all the challenges of COVID-19, but as everyone's just mentioned, as we're heading into what could be a long winter, we're all ready to go. And the fact is the collaborations in Westchester County are so strong, and everyone here can tell you, we all know each other's cell phone numbers, and it's, there's help out there. It may look a little different, but there's a lot of help and a lot of resources. And if anyone is feeling they're in a situation where they're, even as Alexa and Michelle and Darlene mentioned, just want to ask a question, they're not sure what steps they want to take, that's the best time to do it. Reach out whenever you have a question. And I've had clients tell me, and I'm sure everyone feels the same way too, one of the advantages of all these new platforms is, yes, they can have a call with us at 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. Mm-hmm. So there have been some benefits for our victim survivors, even though it's very hard to make this call, when they have the ability to get to the playground or get outside the house to go to the grocery store, whatever they need to do. They know if they make that quick call, they can get some immediate resources. So I would just urge anyone who's watching, these services haven't stopped. And if anything, we've kind of fine-tuned our game that we're ready to help you in whatever format you need.
I would really like to extend a thank you to all of you for everything that you and your agency does to help victims of domestic violence and to make sure that they're able to access services during these difficult times. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We are going to conclude with just making sure, as we talk about all these wonderful available resources, our audience knows how to contact them. So you will see a slide of the main resources in Westchester County. And as you've heard, we really encourage any question or any concern to please reach out to whomever you feel would be appropriate. So thank you again, Laura, Alexa, Darlene, Michelle, Susan. Your wisdom and caring ways and availability is really remarkable, and we are grateful. So thank you. And we appreciate you guys, everyone who was able to watch this, and Again, encourage you to get in touch if needed, and to please reach out to me through Scarsdale Family Counseling Service if this is a topic that you are more interested in being involved in. Thank you.